episode 6 of the Rugby League United podcast, and we feature a big personality with a big heart and a man who's had a big impact on the game, a hugely successful career in the NRL Super League and as an international player as well. Ashton Sims, great to see your smiling face. How are you?
Always smiling, George. How you doing, buddy? Thanks so much for having us on board for the podcast.
It's really good to see you. How are you, and how has this period been, first of all, for you?
You know what? It's actually been really good. I knew the transition from rugby league into normal life would be a bit of a struggle, but I've been one of the real lucky ones where I was very proactive, especially at the back end of my career, with doing some study, with getting some certificates, getting some different education levels in a variety of things, and I've really thrown myself into the mental health space, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing over in England, doing some stuff with Rugby League Cares, doing some stuff with the Adrian Babichir campaign in Warrington there. And it was a real passion of mine, but now to turn it into a full-time job after the career I've had, it's something I couldn't have dreamed as a better job. And, obviously COVID-19's thrown a little bit of spanner in the works, and we got thrown some real big curveballs there early on. About 3 months ago, we had 12 months of face-to-face work taken off us. But I work with a guy, Chris Houston, who was at the Widnes Vikings, and another guy, Dan Hunt, who was a 10-year player at the St George Illawarra Dragons. And the one thing that sport in general, but especially rugby league, teaches you that when life hits you for six, when life feeds you that real shitty sandwich, sometimes you just got to grit your teeth and get through it. And that's what we did. We were very proactive in a reactive situation. And I think our background as professional rugby league players, as sportsmen, really helped us through a real tough period in the company's time and in my time in general.
Your transition, you mentioned, from professional sport into retired sportsman. It's for this podcast, it's quite a perfect case study because it's sport meeting mental health. You've stepped straight into work in that field. It might not be the most obvious of pathways we associate of former players. What will they do next? And you've gone this way. How did it all come about, and why was it something you wanted to go into next after your playing career?
So look, throughout my career, I've had quite a good relationship with my mental health. I've been very, very lucky, very fortunate. I'm a very optimistic kind of guy, very glass half full, as you probably, if you've known me for the last 5 years. I'll always see the best in things, and I'll always see the best in people. And as a rugby league player, look, I wasn't the best player, I'll admit, but what I love doing, I love working hard. I love having a beer with my mates after a game. But the one thing I really enjoyed doing was helping people, both on and off the field, especially if teammates had any problems, any queries, any dramas off the field. They knew they could come up to me and I'd help them. I'd never tell them what to do, but I'd certainly help them find a solution to their problems. And it was a role that I didn't ask to do, but it was a role that, especially after I turned about 24, 25, people started just feeling comfortable coming up to me. If they weren't comfortable going up to coaches, comfortable going up to staff members or other players in the playing group, they could come up to me. And it was a role that I took really seriously. And it was a role that I really took on and really enjoyed in the end. And because, the thing is, we all go through struggles in life. No one's sitting in an ivory tower looking down on life. Even as a professional rugby league player, I was very lucky to do a childhood dream for a job day in, day out for 17 years. And I never took that for granted once. And when people, when people say, I must have been pretty good 17 years, you know what? Yeah, on whole, it was. But we go through peaks and troughs just the same as everyone else. Being injured, being suspended. I've been dropped. I've been told I'm not even one of the clubs anymore. And, they're the things that really play on your mind and really affects your mental health. And just the role that I've come into now is pretty much just that, is letting people know that it is okay to struggle. You know what? It is okay to reach out and seek some support. And I always thought, being a big, tough rugby league player, I didn't have to reach out and seek support if I went through any dramas in my life. And found out in 2013, my daughter, she was born with a deformed kidney, needing surgery straight away. And the way I reacted to that certain situation was a way that no one should have reacted. I isolated myself, I withdrew myself, I pushed the closest people away from me because I didn't want to be seen as that guy who, usually when someone's having problems, that people come up to me, that the people used to come up to me, and it was probably an egotistical thing. I'm not sure what to call it. I don't have an ego, but looking back on it, it probably was. It was one of those things where, well, people see me as that, as that shoulder to lean on. What would people think if I was the one going through the problems? And she's a very happy, healthy 7-year-old daughter now, a little cheeky blonde. But at that time, I'm sure there's listeners out there who they've got children, and looking through a perspex window with my daughter with tubes hanging out of her, it does something to people. And it took me from, just being a very happy-go-lucky kind of dude. It's life is what it is, and it took me into a rough spiral. And the one thing that helped me get out of it was actually reaching out and talking to people, because this word resilience, it gets thrown around all the time. It's like a bit of a sexy word at the moment, but some people just think resilience is, oh no, you just have to do everything on your own. You have to, if you go through struggles or if you go through some crappy things in life, you just put your head in and get through it. But it's not. Resilience, in essence, really means bouncing back from adversity. It means, pursing through adversity and not giving up. And if that means reaching out to support networks, reaching out to friends, family members, professional clinical support if you have to, then I totally encourage that, because I've been there at a part in my life, and I know how much reaching out and seeking support can help people get through struggles.
So do you think then that we can't truly build or find our resilient self or our resilient strength without the adversity? We only truly get it when we have that dark hole.
Well, look, yes, yes and no there, George. I think resilience, obviously, it's what I feel it is bouncing back from adversity, or working through adversity and not giving up, and knowing that you don't have to do it on your own. You know what? Life's hard enough as it is. We've got so many things going on in our life, but and like I said, we all go through those hard times, those hardships, and the thing is, dude, there's so much support out there, but there are some barriers why people don't reach out and seek support. Barriers like, cost, confidentiality, the negative stigma. It's something that we try and break down every single day at the mental health movement, is that negative stigma of reaching out and seeking support. That, if you reach out, people might think you're weak, or you might think that you're less of a man or less of a woman. No, it's, like I said, life is hard enough as it is, but without trying to do it on our own. And if reaching out and seeking support can help you through a struggle, help you through your time of need or despair, then we totally encourage that.
Did you fancy at all staying in the game, going into coaching? Was that ever an option for you?
That was number one, always. I was very lucky enough to get offered a couple of different roles over in the UK too, actually, and it was around the welfare management and welfare. And I always wanted to get into the rugby league department side of things, but not so much coaching, but with the sponsors, with the fans, with the general managing and running of an organisation. And I did a couple of 2 Cert 4s in business, and it was something that I really valued, that I really thought I could get a lot of my love to, because rugby league has always been a passion of mine. And I'll always, rugby league doesn't owe me anything. I owe rugby league absolutely everything. The roof over my head, the clothes on my day is due to, well, 2 things: my parents and rugby league. So rugby league pretty much just reinforced all the values that my parents taught me as a child. Be in uniform, be on time, manners goes everywhere. Hard work, determination, and doing it all with a bit of a smile on your face, because if you're lucky, rugby league, you might play for 8-10 years. And without tooting my horn, I got to play for 17 years. So I am very grateful. Not a day goes past where I used to think, this is just another day at the office, rugby league. No, not at all. I'm that grateful for rugby league, for where it took me through my childhood to where I finished last year. without delving too much into it, I come from very humble beginnings. And when I mean humble beginnings, we didn't have much growing up at all. I remember, times where my father used to put a can of spaghetti on the table in front of me and say, "Ash, this is your dinner for the rest of the week. If you don't like it, tough." And so I look back on all those hardships, all those struggles, all those times I couldn't go on school excursions because we couldn't afford it, all these times where all my mates used to get all these brand new surfboards for their birthdays, and our parents couldn't afford it. I used to get hand-me-downs from my uncles, and I look on those struggles as a real source of motivation and perseverance, and probably, perseverance and expectation for myself, because I know what that side of life looks like, and I don't want to go back there. Trust me, man, I'm happy to go back there if I have to, but it's a motivating factor for me not to go back there with my family. I've got 4 beautiful kids, a beautiful wife that I absolutely adore and love, all of them, and they're my motivation every single day. They're the reason I get out of bed. They're my purpose. They're my why I try and do the best I can on everything that I do. Hopefully I don't come across too fake for some people, because I know that, I used to do some things on the field that weren't, they were a little unsavory and that, but that's just because I'm just a passionate dude. Every single jersey I wore, every single club that I played for, I had so much passion and fire for. And, I wanted to make sure that I respected the jersey enough for the people who played before me, and to make sure that people who wore the jersey after me respected the things that and the values that those clubs stood for. And again, I probably did a few things that I look back on now and sort of shake my head at, but I wear my heart on my sleeve a lot of the times. And but if someone takes advantage of that, I certainly won't forget it.
But you know what? That's really interesting, that question of a playing persona, which I don't actually think you had, but it's interesting that in your head you did, and the perception of you, because you see that a lot. Some niggly, ugly, awful players, which you're not, but I can think of a few. And your natural reaction is to think that's the type of person they are, and then you actually neither get to know them. Like, actually, he's really nice, and that just goes to show how we judge people, and like to a lesser extent. Through my career, I've had a persona on the radio and telly, which was just jokey, gobby northerner who just likes his beer and his pub sports, and it's like couldn't be further from the shy bloke with a French literature degree. It's just a kind of a role.
That's it.
A role you play, and it allows people to get to know you. And I just find that fascinating. People form perceptions, which is their want, but that doesn't mean it's you, does it?
What's the old saying? Never judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And I've learned that plenty of times over the years. Guys I've played against and thinking, geez, he must be the biggest absolute D-head in the world. But I'll tell you what, I've ended up getting good friends with those kind of guys. Yeah. I'm thinking of over in England, I've had a couple of run-ins with John Wilkin when Warrington used to play St Helens, and thinking, oh, geez, I'd love to get a hold of him. And I played the last year with Toronto, last 12 months, and I can genuinely say, hand over heart, he's one of the best dudes I've ever met.
He's lovely, isn't he? Yeah.
He is. He's a funny, quirky, very, very articulate, very meticulous guy with his training, with his food. Enjoys a red wine and a beer every now and then, like that. All it's one of those things. All the best guys I've met in rugby league are a little bit of a weirdo. And big old Wilco, he fits that bill.
Yeah.
But I can tell you a heap of guys in Australia, guys like Paul Gallen, who you look on the field, you think he must be an absolute. But he's one of the nicest, genuine guys you'll ever met. Mick Ennis, he's an absolute perfect example. He's some guy that I played with a few seasons, and you see him and you think, geez, he's a little grub. I'd love to, I'd love to bloody get a hold of him. But when you talk to him off the field, and when you spend time with guys like that, they're just the most genuine kind of dudes. I've got a little funny story about Mick Ennis. Have we got time? Or,
yeah, of course.
We'll go for a minute. So
I'm not going anywhere.
I was Mick Ennis. I was playing at my first year at the Broncos, and Mick was still there. And we were playing the Sydney Roosters. Now, the Sydney Roosters in that those 2008, 2009, they were a very good team. And they had Willie Mason there, obviously ex-Hull KR and Catalan Dragons, big, massive.
Oh, yeah.
And him and Mick Ennis always used to have a lot of run-ins. And it was the day before the game, and Mick Ennis, so we were just finishing up the captain's run, and Mick goes to me, "Oh, Ash, can you just hold the pad?" And I said, "Yeah, no worries." So bang one, like tackle pad, bang one, bang two. He goes, "How'd that feel?" I said, "Yeah, I'll tell you what it feels like. You're ready to go, Mick." And he goes, "Yeah, you bet." So, Willie Mason's probably going to target me in the middle there tomorrow. I said, "Yeah, I'd target you too, mate. You're a little bit of a shorty." He goes, "Yeah. If he starts running at me, you hit him high because I'm going higher." Yeah. He goes, "You hit him high because I'm going higher." And I kid you not, George, as God is my witness, the very next day we played the third tackle of the whole game. Mick Ennis was put on report for a high shot on Willie Mason.
Brilliant. You know, I'm so fascinated by finding out about people, because we just naturally form perception. You telling that story just reminded me of something. It must have been, I don't know when, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. I was maybe longer. I was at the Wigan Warriors training ground in Orrell. It would have been, I think, where they trained. And Sean Wayne, now the England coach, who's a great bloke, and I was waiting to film an interview with him, and he came over to chat to me beforehand. And you know, sometimes he has that look in his eyes. I think, "Oh no, what have I said? What have I done?" And he's like, it was a time when Michael McAlorum, speaking of niggly players on the field, it was when he was ruffling a few players up the wrong way. And I think I'd said something about him on Twitter. In fact, I can remember what I said, because he did something dirty in a game, and I was watching it at home, and I tweeted, he's a nasty so-and-so on the pitch, which he is. You know, Sean came over and said, I read what you've been saying about Mickey. I said, right. He goes, and he's like, you got it wrong. He's a lovely bloke. He's a lovely bloke. I was like, I didn't say he wasn't. And I was like, I'm just saying he's a nasty so-and-so on the pitch.
On the pitch, yeah.
On the pitch, he's a nasty so-and-so. I'm not casting this, but I don't know the bloke. But they clearly had a conversation about, like, look what this journo's saying about you. I was like, and you just sit there, don't you, and just sort of type away. And that actually made me think, okay, hang on a minute. All right, maybe be a bit more careful about what we say about people. And
that's it. It's a funny thing what white line fever does when it comes down to winning and losing. Competitive people, that you'll do whatever it takes to win, and that's certainly something that myself, certainly something like a Mickey Mack did, and you know, like a Mick Ennis, all these guys that, you know, you do whatever it takes to win. And if you've got to try and take a couple of scalps or do a couple of things that's unsavoury, but it's in the best interest of the team, well, yeah, we're happy to do it.
You've already outlined, I was going to ask you about your childhood, but you've summed up what it meant to you and how it built you, and the values it gave you. And in terms of rugby, I mean, tell me how you found rugby, and actually how it was coming through with having two brothers and a sister play rugby as well.
Yeah, so I'm one of 5. I got older sister, younger sister, and 2 younger brothers, and we're all growing up was just very sport orientated. Everything was sport. I told you a few of the things, and I hate sort of talking about it because I don't want to put my parents on the spot. But one good thing that we look back on fondly now is, you know, we didn't have a TV for a lot of, for majorities of times growing up. So coming home from school, it was either sit inside and read a book, or it was go outside and play sport. And, you know, stuff read in book for a joke. It was outside to play sport. It was, you know, summer in the cricket in the summer, rugby in the winter. And one of them childhoods where I look back on it so fondly, man. Absolutely, I'm so thankful that, you know, we didn't get anything easy, but it made you value the things that you get, you know, at that time, but especially later on in life. And that's one thing I'm trying to instill into my children as well is, you know, if you want something, you earn it. If you don't earn it, you don't get it. And, you know, that people have got different perception of fatherhood and how to bring their kids up. And I know sometimes I can be a little bit tough on my kids, but I'm tough on them because I love them more than anything in this world. And like another old saying, you know, you're toughest on the people you love the most. But I was around 15 years old. I got picked up by a man, Alan Carroll. I was playing a Group 7 game just down here on the South Coast, and he'd asked me if I'd come up and try out for the Steelers, the Illawarra Steelers. And I said, yeah, for sure, man, certainly. This is something that a call I've been waiting for 12 months. And I went up there and I did okay. And so I got into the Illawarra Steelers. And when you're in the Illawarra Steelers, you're in St. George Illawarra system. And, I had a really great mentor there, a man by the name of Craig Young, who's an absolute legend, St. George front rower for Australia and New South Wales over the years, did everything. And he really taught me, the ins and outs, how to be a professional. And it was so from 15 to 17, he really took me under his wing, and I was just like a sponge. I've always been like a sponge for knowledge, because I just want to try and get the best out of myself. And so at age 17, I made it into the first grade squad, and I was very lucky to have guys like, Jason Riles, guys like Luke Bailey, Sean Timmins, Trent Barrett, all these guys who were just so receptive of a young guy coming up and in. And there was no ego about it. There was no bull crap about it. They just wanted, they were happy to see a local product doing well. And I was very, very lucky to have another older guy, two older guys, Chris Lightpole, who was at Warrington, and a guy, John Cross, who was right at the end of his career. And John Cross, he took me under his wing in regards to, doing weights, training, extra training. He was 35, I was 17. And when a guy like that takes so much interest in you and can see something a little in you, you sort of step back and think, well, he's investing all this time and effort into me. I'm going to invest all this time and effort into being the best rugby league player it can be, but also being the best person off the field. And one thing that Nathan Brown, my first rugby league coach, one of his best pieces of advice, and it's something I'd still take forward with me today, is it takes the same time to be an arsehole as it is to be a good guy. And that's something I take with me everywhere. People go, geez, you've got so much time for people, but it's like it takes the same time to say, no, I won't sign that autograph, to say, yeah, how you going, mate? Good, yeah, and just sign the autograph. Have a great day. Hopefully see you at the next game. Like it just takes, to me, it just takes the same time and effort. And, I can't say hello to everyone and used to sign everyone's autographs, but I've also been on the other side of the fence too, where I was that kid and, asking people to sign autographs. And I remember one of my heroes going up to him at a game, signing an autograph, and he told me to pee off. So I always have that. I've confronted that guy, not confronted him, but I told him about that. And he goes, oh, sorry, mate, I must have just been on the bad day. I said, yeah, that's all right, no worries. But that's something that sticks with me, and it's moving forward. Even, I won't be getting asked for too many autographs anymore, but even moving forward, that young Ashton, it's still there. That young kid who was so excited to meet one of his heroes and getting blown off by one of his heroes was something I wouldn't want to do. We'll try not to do to anyone else. But rugby league. It was always a big thing for me, man. It was a real passion. It was a real desire for me to be a professional rugby league player.
That's that inclusivity and warmth that you've just outlined to help you when you were the new kid coming in, that might surprise a few people who, obviously the NRL, toughest league in the world, and I'm fascinated what that was like to for an unknown young kid to break into. We've spoken last week. Dennis Betts was on, and he was just a lad from Salford trying to get into that famous Wigan team of the 80s and 90s, and he just said it was brutal, it was ruthless in there. You couldn't say anything or show any weakness because they would pounce on it, and they would, anything you gave them, they would absolutely destroy you, because that's how they saw their opportunity to make you stronger, to pounce on it. I mean, there must have been some of that with you, or was you've outlined the helpfulness and the support there, but I can't imagine it was that a polite dressing room for you when you first.
No. It wasn't all rainbows and lollipops the whole time. I can tell you right now, it wasn't like we were singing Kumbaya in the sheds and holding hands. It was, it was tough, man. I grew up very quick, especially that first preseason. Seeing teammates having fist fights, seeing teammates, calling each other out, having verbals and that with each other. I'm just thinking, shit, man, growing up as teammates, growing up, you never really have that. You get a little bit of niggle here and there, but that's the price of winning, and you've got to pay the price of winning. Sometimes, it weeds out some guys who can't take it in first grade and as a professional rugby league player, but it also galvanizes your strength in your personality as well. Coming up against different changes, challenges, and adversities that we all go through on and off the field. When I say on and off the field, off the field, there's plenty of injuries, there's plenty of downtime where people get in trouble, but it's it can be a bit of a tough one to differentiate or to keep a lid on the two. But when you have good people around you, you're going to take on some of that positive, good energy as well. And that was one thing I always try to do, is just surround myself with good people. They don't have to have, they don't have to be the best rugby league player in the world. They don't have to have, all the money and all the money in the world. They don't have to be, all this extravagant kind of person. But I enjoy hanging around people who have the same work ethic as me, who have the same outlook on life as me. Love to work hard, love to have a bit of a laugh, and they're the kind of people I try to rub shoulders with. And a lot of those people were people who were professional rugby league players for a long time.
Given your values and your outlook on life, which really come across powerfully, does that mean you've always had and always been able to achieve a stable and a strong work-life balance? And if so, how hard was that to do when your work was a professional sportsman flying all over the place?
Yeah, look, I one thing that I like doing, as much as I love rugby league, was actually get away from rugby league. I never used to watch too many games, especially the night before a game, and fill my head with all these scenarios that I'm going to be, offload like a Sonny Bill Williams, or put on big massive hits like Piley Luluwai and all this kind of stuff. Because if you're sitting there watching other people play, you start filling your head up with things that you can probably try and do. But sometimes it's not like that. Especially, in and around training. I used to love going to training. I used to love training as hard as I could. But as soon as I got home from training, I used to just like sit back, relax. I used to like, spending meaningful time with my family. Taking them out for a bit of a walk, taking them to the park, going for a swim, taking them down to the beach, going, down to the Village Hotel there in Warrington, best place on earth. But that was my, I loved escaping the game, because when the next day rocked up, I was ready to go. I was ready to train. I was ready to play. And I had a real thirst. I had a real thirst for the game and for the sport. So that was one of the things being a professional rugby league player. It's not just what you do on the field. It is what you do off the field. And a lot of people, some young guys, not a lot, I won't say that. Some young guys sort of think, all you do is a professional. If you're a professional rugby league player, people will just judge you for what you do on the field. Not the case. People will judge you, if you're going out for a coffee, if you're, driving around in the car, you're speeding down the, Wilderspool Causeway, if you're, parking in a bloody handicap zone, or, you're yelling and carrying on at a pub. People will judge you on that, and people will judge the club on that. And you're a reflection of your club, you're a reflection of your values on the club, and you're a reflection of the values on your actual personal self. And I tried, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a great guy all the time, but I tried not to ever compromise my morals. And they're the morals that my parents drummed into us. Like I said before, manners of respect go everywhere with you. You work hard, you reap the benefits of working hard. And one of my real favourite sayings is, with the boy you were, be proud of the man you become. And I put myself in that young Ashton's, shoes, going and meeting his idol and getting pied off by his idol. And that's just a couple of little things I do. And I've got a young son now, and I see, is he proud of me? Am I showing him the right way? Obviously, I can't hold his hand all his life, but it's one thing to tell your kids what to do, but it's a bigger thing to show them what to do.
I'm struck by a rugby player who's happier when he's not talking about rugby. And It's like, you've had an incredible career. And it was similar last week with Dennis Betts. We hardly talked about his career. And, there are a few things you've had. I'm looking down the list, your time at St George, Brisbane, North Queensland and Warrington and Toronto. You played in, 3 World Cups, was it? For Fiji as well. And incredible highs and lows in, I guess, across the board. How do you ever find yourself sitting back and, reflecting on your career? And if you do, how do you paint the picture in your head of what your career was, your playing career?
If I'm honest, George, I haven't really sat back and had a real think about it yet. I've obviously, when people have asked me, this and that part of my career, I look back on it all fondly. I really do. So some of the highs were great, but some of the lows actually made who I am today. I've learned a lot more from the lows than I have from the highs, because when you're high, everything's great. You know what I mean? You're flying, you're on top of the world. But it's when you're low, when you go through those troughs throughout your career, and every rugby league player or every sportsman go through those troughs, finding ways to bounce back through those troughs, through those adversities, and persevering through them and not giving up, finding ways to persevere through them. And I sort of reveled in that a little bit. Sometimes, if I wasn't playing great and, I'd be dropped, or if I'd be injured, I saw that as a chance to grow. It might sound cliche, it might sound silly, but it was just, I'm just building a little bit of an armory for myself for later, especially for later on in life. And I just think, it was one hell of a journey, man. It really was. Sometimes I'm probably sounding like I'm stuttering and a little bit speechless, but what people got to remember is this was a passion. This was a passion of mine that I've got. So I'm so lucky, so humbled to make into a career. And there certainly were better players than me. There certainly were faster, bigger, stronger, whatever. But I just felt I had a good mental resolve around me, around the sport, and I genuinely love the team sport activity, the team sport about it. And I've never had an ego about myself. I'd be surprised if anyone ever said that I did. What I did was completely for the team. I think team environments, they're just so conducive to grow your own personal worth and your personal skills. And I just look back on some things just with a real big smile on my face and just think, you achieved that, but there's a lot more things to achieve in the future, and that's I'm generally so much looking forward to the future, just as I did through my rugby league career.
To hear you say how much you thrived on your recovery from the lows as much as enjoying the good times, because that's kind of a nice warm bubble that you're in, but it's the education and the learning that you get from the tough times. Are you able to define a little bit more how you mean by that? I mean, I jotted a few things down when I know about your career, but I wanted to read up a bit more. And I know when you left St George, maybe you didn't want to, and then I know at Brisbane there was a couple of downs. I think there was a knock-on, wasn't there, in one of the finals?
Yeah, exactly.
Warrington, of course. Warrington always had the setbacks in major finals. That came to define Warrington, and you were a part of that. So, as an individual in that team environment, how were those moments for you, and how did you pull yourself out of them?
Well, certainly number one was having the good help from teammates, having a good help from my home life. I've been with my wife for nearly 18 years now. And, having the real strong characters around me and understanding and knowing who those closest people are to you when you go through those crappy times. Yeah. I know you mentioned it before, one of the best years I've ever had was that Brisbane Broncos 2008, my first year. And I dropped the ball a minute before the final siren. Melbourne picked it up. Two tackles later, they scored a try. And we were probably one of the form teams of the competition that year. Excuse me. And that moment was just like it was a real tough moment, but it was a real watershed moment for me, because I moped around for about a week after it. And it was through the strength of my wife. She was like, well, look, what are you going to do? Are you going to not stop playing, but are you going to keep moping around about it, or are you going to do something about it? And, I really sat back and I thought to myself, well, let's use this as motivation to move forward. And that was one thing I did. I got straight back into training. 2009, I had another good year, like a personally good year. And we lost a game just before the grand final. But certainly after that, straight after that game of the one that I dropped the ball, that week of moping around, I had my first experience with the Fijian Bharti Rugby League team in the World Cup, 2008 World Cup, and that couldn't have come at a better time. And I just threw all my energy, everything into that World Cup, and we were underdogs, and we got to the semi-finals and got beaten by a very good Australian team. And I remember talking to Petro Sivanasiva after that game, shaking hands, and he goes, he said something around the lines of, you can hold your head high. I know I watched that semi-final game, and but what you're doing for Fijian Rugby League, you and the rest of the team, what we're doing for Fijian Rugby League is something that's really special, and it's going to give kids hope that are on the islands that they can one day play, sport or rugby league in Australia. And it was just like a real, I don't know, without sounding a bit too fruity, and that it was just like a really strong moment in my life, and it certainly helped me understand my why, understand my purpose, my vision was to be the best rugby league player I can be, but was to also help people along my journey.
That ability to reach out and ask people to help you, I've always regarded as a weakness. Do you think it's actually a strength in us? I mean, I'm thinking, and I've chatted to you before the podcast, a kind of places, dark holes I've been to, but I've had to force myself to say, look, I need help here. I'm not good. I need your help, basically. And I've always thought that was a weakness, but I think I've got that completely wrong.
George, you know what, man? It is okay to struggle, and it is okay to reach out and seek support. Again, life is hard enough as it is without trying to do it on our own. And, some of us have had to excuse me, understand it the hard way and learn through it the hard way. But why do people not want to reach out, seek support? Because probably the conditioning of it, through generations, that conditioning is sort of been get on with it, get over it, harden up. Don't stop. Stop bloody worrying about everything else. If you can do it on your own. But it's that old thinking. I'm not even sure if it worked back then, but it's certainly not working now. And, I'm not sure what the statistics are in England, but in Australia, when 8 people are taking their own life every single day, it means that not reaching out and struggling on your own, it's not working. And that's one of the big things that we do at the mental health movement is letting people know exactly what I said. It is okay to struggle because everyone goes through struggles, but it is also okay to reach out and seek some support. And I'm very proud advocate of that, because unfortunately I've had some people along the way who didn't reach out and seek support, and unfortunately the byproduct of that is a few of them aren't here today. And I'll be I always say, I can't help, people say I can't help everyone, but you know what, I can try. I can try through raising awareness, raising education, training, resources, letting people know that some of the professional help out there, some of the social support out there. It's one of the things I'm so passionate about, mate. And just letting people know that everyone's got a mental health. Some people disassociate themselves with mental health. They'll say, mental health, that doesn't affect me, that doesn't bother me. Well, what they're saying is, maybe mental illness or mental ill health doesn't affect or bother them. But everyone's got a mental health. If you've got a brain in your head, you've got a mental health. And we need to be proactive and accountable in looking after it and managing it so we can be the best versions of ourselves.
Were they friends, teammates, the guys who you've just mentioned who were unable to reach out?
Who are unable? Yeah, unfortunately, they were friends. off the field. But there was a couple during my year that were teammates. There was one, I won't mention where, but we'd been training all pre-season. He used to come in with the mask that we call, with that smile on his face, thinking everything's okay. Sort of that happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but deep down he was really struggling. And it was 1 week. It was just after Christmas. Excuse me. We'd finished it. We'd finished a training week. Went and shook hands. Said, "Hey mate, great week. Let's go do it again on Monday." Said, "Yeah man, no worries. Can't wait." I never ever saw him again. And it wasn't until we delved in after it that we didn't really see the signs and symptoms, but they were there. We didn't know that he'd broken up with his partner. His partner didn't let him see his children. He was sleeping on a couch at a friend's house, but he didn't let anyone know that. And I still think to this day, were there signs and symptoms? Yeah, there probably was. Him staying at training later than everyone, that he never used to stay at training that late, and just doing some things around the club that were a little bit out of character. But I didn't know much about the mental health space. I didn't know too much about that then, but looking back on it, excuse me, now, there were signs and symptoms there. And, I've had these conversations with people since. And if I see things, I'm a pretty, black and white kind of guy. If I see people that I think that might be struggling, I'll go straight up to them and ask, "Is everything okay?" And it's not me trying to be a nosy prick. It's me that I've lost people in the past, and I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can in the future to help the people around me.
I mean, almost.
Sorry, mate. I get a little bit, yeah.
No,
get a little bit, passionate and emotional about this because, it's something that's close to my heart, mate.
It's a very emotional thing, and it's something I've experienced personally, and that impact obviously goes way beyond the individual. And to hear you saying, how could we have not known, and what more can we do? And Danny Sculthorpe, who's doing a very similar line of work to you at State of Mind,
doing great things. Yeah, Danny is. Yeah.
And his best mate Terry Newton, obviously we lost, and he was unable to reach out. Mm-hmm. Danny was racked with, how could I have not known, and how why couldn't I help? And he said it's only through educating himself about mental health, and now he says he can actually watch interviews Terry's given, while he was with us, and see that he wasn't right where he at the time he just didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Sometimes you just, it's one of those hard ones where, like I said before, people do tend to wear that mask, you know what I mean? Thinking that everything's okay, but underneath the surface, it's, everything's not so okay. But, the better education that we know, the better ways that we can, educate, train people in looking out for those signs and symptoms, the quicker we can get people to start that conversation with them. And again, it's not, you're not being a nosy bugger. You're actually starting the conversation because you care about that individual.
It's not easy though. It's like, the message that you guys give and your mental health movement, State of Mind, I mentioned, and Rugby League Cares. I'm fortunate enough to be involved in this line of work now as well with State of Mind and Rugby League Cares. And the underlying message through every presentation or every talk or every informal chat we have is the importance of speaking. But the truth is, mate, if it was that easy to open up and talk, we'd all be doing it anyway. So exactly. we wouldn't be needing to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And what we do a lot of things around how to start and hold those important conversations, because we know those important conversations, they not only help change lives, they help save lives. And it's not always about just going up and saying, "Hey mate, is everything okay?" Because what's the first thing that people usually say when, "Hey, is everything okay?" Yeah, I'm sweet. I'm fine. Actually, am I okay? Are you okay? I'm okay. And some people get a little bit defensive about it. So we need to find out different little ways and different avenues around how to start that conversation. If you think someone might be struggling a little bit,
and maintaining the conversation as well. I always say to people, it's better. And a lot of people have said to me, and when I was going through what I was going through, and oh, sorry, I didn't reach out or speak to you. I didn't know what to say. I was like, well, I'm not having that. It's like, say the wrong thing. It's better to be annoying. It's better to be annoying than because that anonymity, there's a feeling of alienation when you're in that hole. And if you need anyone saying, I'd rather hear absolutely the wrong thing, because then you're on your own.
You know what? They might not open up to you the first time, second time, third time. And it doesn't mean they don't want to talk. It might mean that they might not even know what's going on. They might not even know that you've seen a couple of changes in them. But the one thing I do say is, we say at the mental health movement is be consistent with your help, because, like I said, they might not open up the second, third, fourth time, but they just might open up to you, and that's when that's when we've gotten through to them, and we can find out what are some of their contributing factors, what are some of the things that are going on in their life to get them to be struggling mentally. And as soon as we know that, the better we can be as a support, number one, but number two, the better we can link them into appropriate support, whether it's, there could be a whole different range of things. It could be work stress, life stresses, self-medication, trauma, anxiety, depression. There's a whole multitude of things. But how do we know if we don't start that conversation? If you see those signs and symptoms in someone, if you see changes in someone's personality, persona, their day-to-day changes, we really want you to start that conversation.
You mentioned self-medicating. Are you still exercising and physically fit? Now you're not an elite sportsman. I'm forcing myself to go out for a run every day just because I know it puts me in a better mood.
Love it. Exactly. So that's the thing about with exercise and mental health. It's without boring too much, but it's a research-backed coping strategy that not only helps our physical health, but also has great impacts on our mental health. So things like, sleep, diet, exercise, mindfulness, gratitude, sunlight, talk therapy. These are all clinically validated to better improve not only our physical health, but our mental health. And the great thing about being with two ex-rugby league players is we work out every day, from Monday to Friday, sorry. And that's how we start our day. We start our day with a 45-minute workout in the morning. We go and have a swim. The boys go and get a coffee, and then we get into our day-to-day routine. Now, we're not doing this exercise to try and still be rugby league players or anything like that. We are doing this exercise because we know it releases endorphins and feel-good chemicals in our body that make us not only feel great, happier and healthier, but it also gives us a better sense of focus for the day-to-day that we go through. And, that's, with people out there, it's not about just going to the gym, or it's not about turning into a gym rat or whatever. But 30 minutes of light to moderate exercise, again, it releases those feel-good endorphins in our body that just make us happier, healthier. Our focus is better. Our physical image, it can get better, but it's got so many more impacts on our mental health.
How are you enjoying the NRL being back on the telly? Are you watching it?
I am. Yeah, I'm loving it. Yes, it is. I'm doing a little bit of sideline commentary with ABC, and I'm starting in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
Getting used to some of these young guys, the young guys who are coming up and in. And I had this conversation with Chris Houston yesterday, and this morning actually, and it was just like I said to him, "How good is it just watching the rugby league and not worrying about, having to psychoanalyze all these players? He carries the ball in his left hand, he steps off his right foot, he's good or bad under the high ball. It's just." I'm sitting there watching, and I'm appreciating good athletes going around playing the sport that I love. And I'm so thankful, so grateful that I get to watch my two little brothers play around and play with Saints. They've had a bit of a rough start to the year, but hopefully they can bounce back pretty soon. And it just fills me with pride, without sounding fruity again. It just fills me with pride every time I see that NRL badge that, I've got to wear that for 12 years of my life. And I'll always give back to the sport. I'll always give back to the sport of rugby league, whether it's, the NRL standard or the grassroots level. I'm a product of rugby league, and it's taught me and galvanised so many great lifelong skills that I'm forever grateful for.
It's a bit of a different game, slightly different game, isn't it? Coming back under the conditions we're in, and obviously you mentioned your brothers are playing. I don't know if presumably all the players are on board. There aren't, I don't know, are there player welfare concerns, anything like that because of what's happened globally?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not too sure. Obviously, it's done a bit of it's thrown a spanner in the works. You know, I'm talking to a lot of guys from the Toronto Wolfpack team, especially the overseas boys, and that's going to be a bit of a hard one to work around. That obviously with Toronto overseas travel. I just saw that Luke Thompson is leaving St Helens to come to Australia, so I'm not sure how that works either.
And that's because he didn't. That's because he wouldn't take a pay cut. Saints said.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Saints asked people.
Yeah. There you go.
Pay cut, and he said he didn't want to. So that's what they put in their statement anyway. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that, but also more of the fact of, you know, how's he going to get from
over
to Australia?
Yeah.
But hopefully he might be a good swimmer. We don't know. But look, it's obviously COVID-19 has thrown a spanner in the works in everyone's life. You know, we're dealing a lot with at the moment people who are struggling because sport's not on, because sport's a coping strategy for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people work their fingers to the bone from Monday to Friday to watch a little bit of sport on the weekend, and now that's been taken away from them. They're in a sort of bit of a state of limbo, or a state of, you know, I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
And that's where we talk about at work, you know, having a real growth mindset, a growth or adaptable mindset. And having a growth and adaptable mindset helps us go through these challenges, helps us go through, you know, if you can't go, you know, you can't do something one way, have an adaptable mindset to try and get those same feelings that you got from that in another way. Perfect example, COVID-19, the gyms have been shut. Well, okay, I can't go to the gym and pump iron, but I've got a few paint tins in the back shed that I can, you know, that I can fill up and do. I can go for a road run. I know it's freezing in England. It's probably freezing cold outside, but you know, man, chuck a jacket on and chuck some skins on and go for it. It's sometimes, having that kind of mindset really helps.
But it's the motivation factor.
Struggle.
The motivation factor as well, when you don't know how and when something is going to end. You know,
exactly, the unknown.
That's the thing. That, I mean, I can go out for, and you know, I'm still supposed to be training for a marathon that I don't even know if it's going to be on. I think it probably isn't. Yeah. So how on earth do I get myself out into this Manchester rain every single day running for something that probably won't take place?
That's it. Well, we can only control what we can control. You know, we can't control the end of COVID. We can't control the end of border restrictions. But what we can control is looking after our physical and our mental health, and, you know, looking after the people in our four walls. And making sure they're the happiest and healthiest they can be under the conditions. And the great thing about COVID-19 is it's definitely not going to last forever. You know, we don't have a finish line yet, but it's not going to be like this for the rest of our life. Our new normal might change a little bit. It might not be the old normal that we had, but it's one other thing too. It's probably enhanced. It's enhanced the gratitude in the little things that we take for granted. You know, going and getting a haircut, going, you know, down to the gym, going for a swim in the pool, going and having a coffee, going and having a meal with at a restaurant with friends. We've had that taken away from us for 3 or 4 months, and I know, you know, pubs and clubs have just opened back in Australia. And talking to a few people close to me, you know, they rang me and said, I've never tasted a pint so good. So just those little things, when things get taken away from you, just having that gratitude and know that, you know, unfortunately it can be taken away from us, and it may again in the future. Hopefully not, but I think we'll be better equipped.
Oh, you made me just think about beer. I'm 164 days without a beer now.
There you go. How good's that?
Yeah, just something I wanted to do, mainly for my mental health at the start of the year, and just see where I went with it. But I tell you, through this period, it's been tough. It's been really hard.
No, good on you. I'll tell you what, man, that's mental fortitude right there. 164 days. Good on you, man. And hopefully you keep going with it as long as you need to.
We'll see where we go. Listen, Ashton, I always enjoy, you know, I always enjoy catching up with you in our chats. Today, especially hitting record and doing a podcast with you has been, it's just been great chatting. You've spoken so well on values, on morals, on, I guess, the importance of your circle, your family unit, and that close circle around you, and the work-life balance as well, which I think we can all learn from. So thank you. Thanks for coming on, and obviously wish you continued success with everything you do.
Thank you very much, George. And, thanks everyone for listening. Just if one more thing that I can say is, look after your mental health. We've all got a mental health. Look after it. Be proactive and accountable in looking after it so we can be the best version of ourselves. And if you are struggling, if you are, feeling at the end of your despair, please reach out and seek some support. There is so much support out there, both socially, professionally. You don't have to do it on your own. And it's not reaching out. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It just means, reaching out for support just means you want to be doing better than you currently are. And who of us don't want to be doing better than we currently are. So again, George, thank you very much. I really appreciate that and look forward to our next chat.
Thank you, Ashton Sims on the Rugby League United podcast, and we'll be back next week.